The Attack of the Gun Devil, the Shibuya Incident, and the Paranormal Liberation Front. 3 arcs in serialization at the same time. 3 arcs belonging to the most popular shonen at the time of around 2020. And they were all traumatic for each of their residing fan bases, changing the status quo of the manga and acting as a shift of priorities for each of the stories. So traumatic in fact that the name The Hell Set was created to describe the terrors that reigned on the pages of Western Shonen Jump for weeks on end. Ironically, after all 3 of these arcs, each of these manga would fall off in their own ways, but I talked about that to death last year.
Nuke the whole generation.
Though I don't know if you noticed, but even though these 3 were pillars of new gen, one sticks out like a sore thumb. Even when My Hero Academia was really stinking good, people still undermined its greatness and its growth towards maturity and more complex topics. Even as the series was becoming more and more dark, it just wasn't enough for people. So the title of Hell Set was disregarded, even though it wasn't a statement of quality but just an observation over shared fandom experiences. Instead, certain people adopted a new label, and instead of MHA, a little manga called Hell's Paradise took its place. A manga that was a bit more bloody, serene, and had all the symbolism that would make the neighboring 2 fandoms happy, because that's all they've ever really cared about. My question though has always been a simple one that even after 2 reads, I still don't know the answer to. Why? Where the f did you guys find this manga? Of course it comes from the pages of Western Shonen Jump and... Wait, no it doesn't! It was Jump Plus, the digital little sister to its more traditional magazine. And it actually predates both Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man by a few months. And while it's definitely not unsuccessful, Jesus Christ, someone get this lad his 40k! The vibes are not giving. Furthermore, the story isn't some sprawling epic meant to go on for years and years with engaging long-form storytelling. Not only is it shorter than Demon Slayer, it's kind of just Japanese Suicide Squad. You know, an uber-political black ops story about a bunch of disposable pawns with grey morality carrying out a mission to obtain a MacGuffin in exchange for a more trivial sentence. But instead of a bunch of DC nobodies, it's a bunch of mercenaries, bandits, assassins, and ninjas. Bro, this sounds f***ing gas! Why doesn't anyone talk about it? Oh, you bastard. Not only do you take down one of my best videos, but you overshadow a series both in graphic novel and in anime form that is undoubtedly better than you. So, in comparison to the other manga in the Dark Trio, or even the Hell Set, it hasn't sold that amazingly. It's overshadowed by them, and it's surprisingly short. So seriously, why the fuck and where the fuck did y'all find this series? This has to be addressed right now. The internet's affinity for wanting to be different has gone too far. Listen, especially in 2026, I am all for putting down a series like My Hero Academia, but Jigokuraku has to be one of the most random picks anyone could have ever came up with to do the job. This whole situation is made more weird by the fact that Jigokuraku, or Hell's Paradise, is actually pretty good in my opinion. Upon a reread, it's genuinely become one of my favorite shonen, if that means anything to you, which weirdly enough, for some reason it does. You have hundreds and thousands of subs, bro. Why does my top 5 matter to you? Literally, go suck off Kakutami somewhere else. Aside from all the Eastern mythology inbred into the DNA of the series, mythology that I'm way too sleepy to want to dive into, and too traumatized to even make the attempt, there's just so much good character work. The type of character work you can only really have with a premise like this. Characters that have never met but fated to change each other's lives, a location so out of the way that simply leaving may cost the very nature of the cast, and circumstances that bind an unlikely family, sprawling artwork, a metaphysical power system, and maturity that isn't too self-indulgent, and something a bit more meta that I'll get to later. You know what? F it. Who doesn't want to root for an underdog in the manga sphere, especially if it's to dismiss Horikoshi and his butt buddy? Yeah! Whoop their ass, Daredevil! Clans and world building. Jujutsu Kaisen has implicated storytelling. Like, yeah, the world these characters live in is implied to exist. We're sometimes told about it, but nothing is shown, nothing is felt, and the things that are explained are so overly wordy. To this very day, especially with certain things that have happened in the manga, we still don't know how Yuta's powers work. Power systems and world building go hand in hand in a story like Jujutsu Kaisen, and the series is notoriously really bad at explaining the former. But more than that, want to know more about the Zenin clan and how they've oppressed much of the cast? Too bad they died too soon. What about the Gojo clan made Gojo's relationships as equals with Geto and a few of his students so meaningful? Does it even matter? Did any anime onlys pick up on the fact that the main antagonist shares a name with one of our supporting cast members?
I guess we'll never find out.
Sukuna's history, Tengen's history, the emphasis on the higher-ups. It makes me wonder why Gege even bothered with some of these ideas if he was never even gonna bother with these ideas. It's almost as if because of Jigo's limited cast and focused runtime and more centralized theming, since let's face it, JJK is frankly about too many things, we can really explore the society that has made these criminals and their guardians act the way they do. I will go in depth more in a minute, but let's move on. Character arcs. Because of the world building being more streamlined, the character arcs are actually more complete and thorough. I can give you tons of examples, but let me just give you one. Jujutsu Kaisen talks a lot about, say, misogyny, for example, and how the women feel trapped. Too bad the story itself views these women as so insignificant, it refuses to do anything with them. Nobara is clapped. We got like 3 plot devices. Maki just murders the problem and doesn't allow the story to get to the bottom of it. And I mean, for the entire series, 2/3 of Maki's character is in service to power scaling the rest of the verse and characterizing the man she parallels. And of course, another female character, Mai, has to die in service of all of this. A character that, by the way, has a 70% chance of having gone through something very traumatic and objectifying, but the story feels like it would be a waste of time delving into. Are you serious? Cause, you know, maybe if we were put into both of their shoes more throughout the story, I wouldn't feel the way I do about these characters. But both of their arcs begin, and almost the next time they become significant to the story, finish. There is no midpoint, just a footnote of one. I mean, we literally have a queer character who transitioned into a female, and the story with a central theme about women's role in Jujutsu sorcery doesn't call attention to it and even fridges them, despite their really cool power and unique character design. And yes, I said them. Feel free to correct me in the comments, cause maybe this is my fault, maybe this is more Wary Kaizen, but we really don't know their proper pronouns. Akutami possibly being a woman makes everything funnier by the day. The role of women in Jigo is the same. They're supposed to be pretty, supportive, and satisfied in the future home life, and there are even more examples in the story of their use for sexual gratification. And the story explores that, not only through backstories and monologues, but through genuine character breakthroughs, through parallels between the cast, even including men. What other shonen makes gender out to be nothing more than a societal construct? Only Fujimoto has done that, and he only did it when he was a good writer. And it does all of this while not even allowing characters to leave the fucking island. Meanwhile, we have at least 6 or 7 Japanese colonies worth of time for JJK characters, and yet we get nothing. Jeez. Gege set women farther back than Emeru.
Asa! I'm Asa from Chainsaw Man.
Who? Symbolism. Speaking of the island,
This is the island?
this is something I'm personally out of my depth when discussing, but to me, how do I put this? There's symbolism that's used to justify a story's worst qualities, and then there's symbolism that actually expands a story. In Jigo, to me, whether it be its purposeful time period, its power system revolving around the need for emotional stability, its in-universe exploration of a religion and how it's used in culture, even cultures lost to time, its parody of religion by revealing the faux gods of this verse are just a bunch of lonely sex-crazed lunatics, its subversion of this culture by commenting on the art of gender identity, I don't know. All of this means more to me than a manga that just says, hey look, this one guy feels like the Buddha. Hey look, this chick is enlightened. Hey look, this guy is dressed like a monk.
I'm in the Aston doing donuts. I will kill the game.
Oh my god, my boy says he's in the Aston doing donuts!
It's all set dressing to me. And even if I were to believe that Jujutsu Kaisen uses its Eastern mythology meaningfully, as I've always said, none of that matters to me because symbolism is not a substitute for actual writing. Symbolism should not be the story, it should be the method of explaining it and making it more emotionally resonant for people. angle. The fact that I'm just a piece of shit Westerner, and Jigo does a better job of not only explaining, but making meaning out of its symbolism, speaks volumes. I'm telling you, that fucking Kubo influence does nothing for no one. For these reasons, I think Hell's Paradise is way better than Jujutsu Kaisen, though honestly that's not saying much. A Cinna struggle meal is better than that shit. I'm pretty sure Christina Hodson could cook up a better Jujutsu Kaisen.
Wait, he's Batman?
You know, they say the third time's a charm, but for everyone else's sake, I hope this gets cancelled too. And as for Chainsaw Man, well, honestly to me they're pretty close. Didn't mention this, but Jigo's author was actually an assistant of Fujimoto, so maybe that's where the internet push comes from. I was someone who genuinely had Chainsaw Man up there in my top 10. Obviously not anymore, but I think as short shonen go, Chainsaw Man Part 1 and Jigo might be somewhat of the gold standard. All in all, I guess the Dark Trio would look something like this. Yeah, sure, whatever. If for some reason someone wants to put me on X, there's your screen cap. I will be the first anime fan to admit I don't know a lot about Japan. Never been there, and for a channel that is filled with discussions about their art, maybe I ought to do more research. But in doing this for so long, I've picked up on a few things. If there are two topics shonen love to harken back to, it's discrimination and freedom. The idea of a label thrusted upon you, and the idea of that label entrapping you. There's a consistent motif across Western Shonen Jump, and a few other magazines where, whether it be a fate that needs to be broken, a consciousness that needs to be fought for, the agonizing loneliness of being the strongest or smartest, or being unable to pursue your own wants and desires due to a system deciding who you are for you. Chainsaw Man, for example, with its mountains of critique against somewhat Western imperialism, literally has a spy from the Soviet Union rethink her entire existence when met with the bliss that came from feeling free and finding happiness in simplicity. And when met with certain things I've come across regarding Japan's work culture in a society that prefers homogeneity, dismissing individuality, it makes you wonder just how free the authors feel themselves. Even the mangakas that are touted as woke one way or another always fall short and resort back to their default settings when the finale rolls around. I don't know. Easterners are way less honest and forward with their stories than people in the West. It's why I find the opinions I can find regarding shonen authors' opinion on shonen so fascinating, especially when that comes within a story itself. When I ask on this channel, why do these shonen manga talk about freedom, individuality, and progressive politics while never following through, Hell's Paradise is what I mean. Do I think Jigo is a response to these other shonen? Nah. But I think it is a response to a society that for a while in this magazine, especially within the Hell set or the Dark Trio, has gone unscathed and unscrutinized for far too long. A story that criticizes religious practices that are just meant to further lust, and a government that's at the palms of an immature politician. Hell's Paradise is one of the only shonen battle manga I've come across that allow its characters to say, it doesn't have to be this way. And then the story affirms it shouldn't be that way. Everyone gets a suitable ending. Not an overly optimistic one, not one that wrongfully punishes those who don't deserve it, but just a good ending. Each character, given their circumstances and arcs, rightfully obtain balance in their final moments, like early parts of the story promised, and like the power system itself promised. Not only does the power system revolve around admiring and accepting the parts of yourself that might be a little ugly, everything from the setting, time period, clan politics, and discussions of individual roles never come at the cost of the characters being given true freedom. Not freedom within a system that continues to perpetuate oppression, like actual freedom, where certain characters get to live or die being what they truly are. Because it is through an ensemble of both supposedly righteous individuals and societal dregs that they realize that their only real divide is the label society puts on each of them. Shouldn't there be more to a samurai than to uproot the laws of the land? Isn't there more to being a woman than being a docile puppet or a pretty face? Isn't there more to being a brute than pure muscle? Isn't there more to religion than eternal life? Why does integrity stop at those society deems as mistakes? Those who are given a role don't have to let that define them. And that's not to say the story is perfect. This is a Suicide Squad story, and yet there are a good amount of fake out deaths. And just like Chainsaw Man, it might not be long enough or dense enough to explore its themes in the ways I want it to. But going back to Hell's Paradise after first giving it a chance in 2021, the experience was very validating. I think part of why I take these shonen shortcomings so seriously is that, especially as someone who wishes to be more creative, I see myself in a lot of these authors and in a lot of these stories. But Jigo is one of the only ones not to betray those feelings by the end. So to close this little video off, is Jigo's Paradise, the script overlords ordained that I keep that take in, a suitable replacement for My Hero Academia? Well, given the fact that at the time we had 2 arcs that represented the heart of the series, 2 arcs that continued the complex topic of redemption post-abuse, and a setup arc that makes our antagonist multi-dimensional, culminating in a war arc that to this day is still undefeated when in its own vacuum, of course not! Most things aren't. But does it matter? Guys, I'm aware that the current internet landscape is just a gentrified version of sports Twitter, but that doesn't mean we're actually on different teams here. Don't get me wrong, comparison is an ever helpful version of critique, but let's not act like our faves are so much better than something that is beloved for a good reason that we have to throw a bullshit label to categorize those faves, especially when the label is nothing more than an overly complicated way of saying that our darker, bloodier, and profusely denser manga is better than that slightly kiddish graphic novel, which is not even true. Just because your panels have more black ink and more Buddhist references doesn't make your story better. I mean, it's Jujutsu Kaisen for God's sake. And I hate that a genuinely good story is wrapped into these bizarre fandom politics. Like, I suppose Jigo is tonally similar to something like Chainsaw Man and has the knack for fantastical monster designs, but those are where the similarities end for the most part, even if I do recommend Jigo if you like Chainsaw Man. Matter of fact, listen, Hell's Paradise, despite its sort of underwhelming anime adaptation, is a good story with good characters, a streamlined and easy to follow plot, great art, and a unique setting. Sure, some aspects may pale in comparison to its more ambitious brothers and sisters, but it's a story with its own merits, its own special qualities that deserves to be experienced on its own. And aside from its epilogue, its ending is pretty much perfect and more than satisfying, given everything I've talked about on this channel. So forget this nonsensical trio nonsense. Just go watch it already and have fun. And if you like it, let me know. Or don't. I don't care. Wait a minute. A Japanese period piece centered around a MacGuffin that can extend the life force of a certain species in a grounded power system and symbolism etched in Eastern mythology. Daredevil, for the love of God, please fight someone else.
Stepped in the door, waving the faux.